the Idries Shah Foundation podcast. Practical Psychology for Today. Featuring the works of Idries Shah, voiced by David Ault. Welcome to the Idries Shah Foundation podcast. In this edition of the podcast, we will hear selections from the exploits of the Incomparable Mulla Nasrudin by Idries Shah. This audio has been made available by the Idries Shah Foundation. Nasrudin and the Wise Men. The philosophers, logicians, and doctors of law were drawn up at court to examine Nasrudin. This was a serious case, because he had admitted going from village to village, saying, "The so-called wise men are ignorant, irresolute, and confused." He was charged with undermining the security of the state. "You may speak first," said the king. "Have paper and pens brought," said the mullah. Paper and pens were brought. "Give some to each of the first 7 savants." They were distributed. "Have them separately write an answer to this question. What is bread?" This was done. The papers were handed to the king, who read them out. The first said, "Bread is a food." The second, "It is flour and water." The third, "A gift of God." The fourth, "Baked dough." The fifth, "Changeable according to how you mean bread." The sixth, "A nutritious substance." The seventh, "Nobody really knows." "When they decide what bread is," said Nasrudin, "it will be possible for them to decide other things. For example, whether I am right or wrong. Can you entrust matters of assessment and judgment to people like this? Is it or is it not strange that they cannot agree about something which they eat each day, yet are unanimous that I am a heretic?" Judgment. When the mullah was a judge in his village, a dishevelled figure ran into his courtroom demanding justice. "I have been ambushed and robbed," he cried, "just outside this village. Someone from here must have done it. I demand that you find the culprit. He took my robe, sword, even my boots." "Let me see," said the mullah. "Did he not take your undershirt, which I see you are still wearing?" "No, he did not." "In that case he was not from this village. Things are done thoroughly here. I cannot investigate your case." First things first. To the Sufi, perhaps the greatest absurdity in life is the way in which people strive for things, such as knowledge, without the basic equipment for acquiring them. They have assumed that all they need is 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth, as Nasrudin says. In Sufism, a person cannot learn until he is in a state in which he can perceive what he is learning, and what it means. Nasrudin went one day to a well in order to teach this point to a disciple who wanted to know the truth. With him, he took the disciple and a pitcher. The mullah drew a bucket of water and poured it into his pitcher. Then he drew another and poured it in. As he was pouring in the third, the disciple could not contain himself any longer. "Mullah, the water is running out. There is no bottom in that pitcher." Nasrudin looked at him indignantly. "I am trying to fill the pitcher. In order to see when it is full, my eyes are fixed upon the neck, not the bottom. When I see the water rise to the neck, the pitcher will be full. What has the bottom got to do with it? When I am interested in the bottom of the pitcher, then only will I look at it." This is why Sufis do not speak about profound things to people who are not prepared to cultivate the power of learning, something which can only be taught by a teacher to someone who is sufficiently enlightened to say, "Teach me how to learn." There is a Sufi saying, "Ignorance is pride, and pride is ignorance." The man who says, "I don't have to be taught how to learn," is proud and ignorant. Nasrudin was illustrating, in this story, the identity of these two states, which ordinary humankind considers to be two different things. In accordance with a technique known as opprobrium, Nasrudin was acting the part of the ignorant man in his picture charade. This is a familiar part of Sufi technique. His disciple pondered this lesson, linking it with other absurd actions of the mullah. A week later he went to Nasrudin and said, "Teach me about the picture. I am now ready to learn." Whose shot was that? The fair was in full swing, and Nasrudin's senior disciple asked whether he and his fellow students might be allowed to visit it. "Certainly," said Nasrudin, "for this is an ideal opportunity to continue practical teaching." The mullah headed straight for the shooting gallery, one of the great attractions, for large prizes were offered for even one bullseye. At the appearance of the mullah and his flock, the townsfolk gathered around. When Nasrudin himself took up the bow and 3 arrows, tension mounted. Here, surely it would be demonstrated that Nasrudin sometimes overreached himself. "Study me attentively." The mullah flexed the bow, tilted his cap to the back of his head like a soldier, took careful aim, and fired. The arrow went very wide of the mark. There was a roar of derision from the crowd, and Nasrudin's pupils stirred uneasily, muttering to one another. The mullah turned and faced them all. "Silence! This was a demonstration of how the soldier shoots. He is often wide of the mark. That is why he loses wars. At the moment when I fired, I was identified with a soldier. I said to myself, I am a soldier, firing at the enemy." He picked up the second arrow, slipped it into the bow, and tweaked the string. The arrow fell short, halfway towards the target. There was dead silence. "Now," said Nasrudin to the company, "you have seen the shot of a man who was too eager to shoot, yet who, having failed at his first shot, was too nervous to concentrate. The arrow fell short." Even the stallholder was fascinated by these explanations. The mullah turned nonchalantly towards the target, aimed and let his arrow fly. It hit the very centre of the bullseye. Very deliberately he surveyed the prizes, picked the one which he liked best, and started to walk away. A clamour broke out. "Silence," said Nasrudin. "Let one of you ask me what you all seem to want to know." For a moment nobody spoke. Then a yokel shuffled forward. "We want to know which of you fired the third shot." "That? Oh, that was me." The Magic Bag. A huckster, planning to set up his stall in the marketplace, saw Nasrudin coming towards him, counting a handful of coins. He stopped him at once. With any luck he could make a coup. "You seem like a man of exceptional insight," he said. "Would you like a magic nosebag?" What can it do?" "Just look and see." The conjurer put his hand in the bag and took out first a rabbit, then a ball, finally a growing plant in a pot. Nasrudin could not give him his money fast enough. "Just one thing," said the conjurer, wanting to gain time to get on his way. "Don't annoy it. These bags are temperamental. And don't confide too much in others about this. All will be well in the end." Nasrudin had planned to spend the midday rest period in the local tea house, but he was now so excited that he headed straight for home, bag in hand. By and by, it became very hot. He was tired and thirsty. The mullah sat down by the wayside. "Magic bag," he said, "and give me a glass of water." He put his hand in the bag, but it was empty. "Ah," said Nasrudin, "perhaps it is only giving rabbits balls and plants because it is temperamental." He thought it would do no harm to test it. "All right then, give me a rabbit." No rabbit appeared. "Don't be annoyed with me, I just don't understand magic bags." When his donkey was annoyed, he reflected. He bought it a nosebag. So he rode into town and bought a donkey for his new nosebag. "What are you doing with 2 donkeys?" someone shouted. "Ah, you don't understand," said the mullah. "It is not 2 donkeys. It is 1 donkey and his nosebag, and 1 nosebag and his donkey."
The unsuspected element. 2 men were quarrelling outside Nasrudin's window at the dead of night. Nasrudin got up, wrapped his only blanket around himself, and ran out to try to stop the noise. When he tried to reason with the drunks, one snatched his blanket and both ran away. "What were they arguing about?" asked his wife when he went in.
It must have been the blanket. When they got that, the fight broke up."
The Burglars. Hearing someone moving about in his house, the mullah became frightened and hid in a cupboard. In the course of their search, the 2 burglars opened the door and saw him cowering there. "Why are you hiding from us?" asked one.
"I am hiding from shame that there is nothing in this house worthy of your attentions."
Eating matter and reading matter. Nasrudin was carrying home some liver which he had just bought. In the other hand, he had a recipe for liver pie which a friend had given him. Suddenly a buzzard swooped down and carried off the liver.
"You fool!" shouted Nasrudin. "The meat is all very well, but I still have the recipe."
Adventures in the Desert.
"When I was in the desert," said Nasrudin one day, "I caused an entire tribe of horrible and bloodthirsty Bedouins to run."
"However did you do it?"
"Easy. I just ran, and they ran after me."
Circumstances alter cases. The rain was pelting down. Aga Akil, the most sanctimonious man in town, was running for shelter.
"How dare you flee from God's bounty?" thundered Nasrudin at him. "The liquid from heaven? As a devout man, you should know that rain is a blessing for all creation."
The Aga was anxious to maintain his reputation. "I had not thought of it in that way," he muttered, and slackening his pace he arrived home soaked through. Of course he caught a chill. Soon afterwards, as he sat wrapped in blankets at his window, he espied Nasrudin pelting through the rain, and challenged him. "Why are you running away from divine blessings, Nasrudin? How dare you spurn the blessing which it contains?"
"Ah," said Nasrudin, "you don't seem to realize that I do not want to defile it with my feet."
The food of the cloak. Nasrudin heard that there was a banquet being held in the nearby town, and that everyone was invited. He made his way there as quickly as he could. When the master of ceremonies saw him in his ragged cloak, he seated him in the most inconspicuous place, far from the great table where the most important people were being waited on hand and foot. Nasrudin saw that it would be an hour at least before the waiters reached the place where he was sitting, so he got up and went home. He dressed himself in a magnificent sable cloak and turban and returned to the feast. As soon as the heralds of the Emir, his host, saw this splendid sight, they started to beat the drum of welcome and sound the trumpets in a manner consonant with a visitor of high rank. The chamberlain came out of the palace himself and conducted the magnificent Nasrudin to a place almost next to the Emir. A dish of wonderful food was immediately placed before him. Without a pause, Nasrudin began to rub handfuls of it into his turban and cloak. "Your Eminence," said the prince, "I am curious as to your eating habits, which are new to me."
Nothing special," said Nasrudin. "The cloak got me in here, got me the food. Surely it deserves its portion."
This podcast is copyright 2016, the Idries Shah Foundation.